I'm in. Evening. Oh, Michael's here. Right on time. Oh yeah, you've done the request. Awesome. Evening, Michelle. Michael's here already, right on time. Not used to this punctuality.
Achievement.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. You?
I'm asking that like I haven't just spoken to you. Mike and I just had a quick icebreaker chat, but we'll pretend that that hasn't happened for the purposes of the tape. Oh, he's got his red wine out. I thought I'd do a little intro.
Bit of Dutch courage.
We don't need it, you'll be fine. A little bit of an intro into what we're doing here. So we spoke at the C-List, we did a lot of talking about bowel cancer last month, which was brilliant, but it was also Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. And as a result, we got in touch with a charity called the Oddballs Foundation. I'm quite new to these guys, but they are brilliant. I love them already. I don't know if you're familiar with Copperfield, Michael. They remind me of what Copperfield would be if they were a testicular cancer charity. Lots of young university ambassadors, lots of talking about, checking your balls, encouraging everyone to break down that stigma. And I spoke to a chap called George there who said, if you want a patient perspective, Michael's your man. Michael's your man. And look, we've made it happen.
He's giving me the big sell, so I feel like a bit of pressure now.
No pressure at all. But I have been looking forward to speaking to you because your own experience, you were diagnosed back in 2010 and treated in 2010 also. So I thought maybe we could start by going back maybe a little bit just before that. What were you doing day to day? And when was it that you started noticing those symptoms? I wouldn't say, I think I'm getting some feedback. I don't know if that's is anyone else hearing that? Is it my voice? Is it my phone? Can you hear that?
You've just gone very quiet there.
Have I gone really quiet? I can hear my voice like echoing in the background. But yeah, if you could go back and tell us what the normal day-to-day was and when you started noticing any.
Yeah, I mean, I started a new job middle of 2009, just before I got married. We got married in the August 2009. Me and Lauren had been together for forever. I think I delayed it as long as I could by that point. We went away on a honeymoon, and I slipped back into the job I'd started a few months earlier, and I was working 6.5 days a week, basically.
What was that?
Taxi driving.
Yeah, busy.
So, yeah, I was enjoying it. It was good to be back. I'd had, major knee surgery beforehand, so I'd taken some time away from work and everything. So, getting into that, and I was at the turn of the new year, I was looking at actually stepping up to start running the company for the people I was working for. So I'd done quite well, made an impact, straight away almost. But it was the classic things of sort of the tiredness, and I also had a lot of lower back pain, which I assumed was just from driving for 50, 60, 70 hours a week. So took myself off to the GP. He said it's probably just an infection. He sent me off. He says, but, the classic thing, let's be safe. Sent me off to the urologist who, he said again, I think it's just an infection. Sent me off with some antibiotics. And then a few days later, I got a phone call saying, and I had a scan as well at the same time. Then they said, rang me up, said, can you pop in and have a chat? And I think at that point, my brain started going into like safe mode.
Yeah.
Sort of starting to sort of protect myself. Mm-hmm. So they showed me the scan. Laurie, my wife, she went with me that day. I think she knew instantly what it was and what it was going to be. Again, my brain started shutting down, protecting myself, basically. In my mind's eye, I can still see that scan now, a scan of my right testicle, which was, well, they're never pretty things at the best of times, but this one with a tumour attached to it was even less so.
Had you
So
noticed
that
them
just set everything in motion from there.
So had you noticed them?
Pardon?
Was it just the back pain and the tiredness? There was
Yeah, it's mainly the back. I mean, I am one of those that is smart enough to check himself. You know, it's a habit I've had for a long, long time, and you know, I still didn't catch it. So you know, I was a bit lucky in that regard.
Yeah.
So you know, we carried on from there. The doctor decided, well, we're going to have a couple of meetings and decide what the plan is, and so they came back and we said, right, we're gonna take it off. And I said at that point, can you delay the operation by a fortnight? Because half term at schools will make my life a lot easier at work, which probably wasn't the brightest idea I've ever had.
Straight to work.
Yeah, again, it was probably a protection mechanism. It was probably me trying to just maintain normality, knowing full well that you know, what was lying ahead was going to be anything but normal. It was, you know, I hate to use that phrase I've used over the time.
Sorry, how old were you when that all happened?
I was 27.
27, really young.
It's a young man's problem.
I did.
Testicular cancer is a young man's cancer.
Between, is it 15 to 39? It's the most common cancer in men. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah, so I was right in the middle of that age range. So, you know, I had me up in. The operation was in the February 2010. So I've been married 156 days when I had my operation.
How did the body confidence element of that? Did that affect you? Do you think if it didn't, was it anything to do with maybe being in a relationship, a supportive relationship, that made it maybe a little bit easier? Because I can just imagine. Well, I've had a double mastectomy, and my God, I have had reconstruction on my left side, and when I was younger, I've had a lot of time to become at peace with it. Initially, oh my goodness, I was devastated. I just thought that this was the end of my femininity. No one would ever find me attractive. These are also, like, you learn that these are things that don't necessarily. Again, what matters is what is on the inside, as cheesy as it sounds, and a boob's a boob, and femininity is an energy. It's not boobs or hair. But it did really knock me, and I've always wondered, because it's the young man's disease, whether confidence can be an issue when it comes to testicular cancer.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that I had that, you know, me and Lauren had been together for such a long time by that point, and throughout it, I cannot speak highly enough of that girl. She was the one thing that got me through it. Honestly, I think if it hadn't been for Lauren, I'd have dealt with it like probably most men would. I'd have gone and find as many bottles as I can, and I'd have necked him.
Yeah.
I think that's what, you know. But, you know, like I said, I was lucky. In terms of the body image and the confidence, I'm very self-deprecating about myself anyway. That's, I think, you know, about my weight and everything like that. So I'm quite capable of taking the piss out of myself. And I think I've always done the same since I had the one cut off. You know, I'll make jokes about, like, they gave me the option of having a prosthetic put in. Yeah. So I'll make a joke, well, they have to put one in, otherwise I'd be walking to the left all the time because I'm slightly heavier on that side. You know, there's I don't know if anyone watches Scrubs, Turk, the black surgeon in it, he has the same, he loses one of his, and there's a cutaway of JD's memory of his brain where they're in a shop of all these different potential fake testicles, you know, and I've always said, you know, I want one that says I'm with stupid, something like that.
So you opted not to go for it in the end?
No, I've got the prosthetic one in. I can walk in a straight line now.
Worried.
So, you know, but I say I tried not to get too, you know, bogged down on the sort of aesthetics of it all and what have you. There were days, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I was married by now, so I didn't have to try too hard. I could let myself go a bit. Wasn't quite what I had planned, but you know,
yeah,
these things happen. So I didn't. There was times where I'd sit, you know, unfortunately afterwards the op, and I spent a lot of time in hospital because I had a blood clot. A couple of weeks later, that was when it was actually confirmed. Then, because it never actually showed up in any of my blood tests that I had before the op or anything. There was no tumour markers there. So for whatever reason,
the microscope and yeah, I get to
yeah, the only way they could find out is by cutting it off, because with testicular cancer they don't biopsy it either, because if they try a biopsy, it'll spread the cells. They'll just shoot through your system very quickly, apparently. So, and you can function perfectly normal with one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it's easier options. Just take it out and crack on.
Orchidectomy, is that what it's called? When you
That's the one, an orchidectomy. Yes.
How do you say it? Orchidectomy.
Orchidectomy. Like the flower.
That's it, right? Like the orchid. Okay, right. So when you had your surgery, was there any more treatment after that, or was that your treatment complete?
No, I had. I saw my consultant a couple of weeks later, because, as I say, I got told when I had a blood clot. The doctor that told me, my wife, one of the first things she said, because she came in a bit after, was actually that my doctor who told me I just had cancer was quite cute. So, yeah, we've not been married 6 months. She was eyeing up replacements, I think, just in case. So I saw my consultant a couple of weeks later, and he gave me various options. If it had been a few months earlier, they would have treated me with radiotherapy. But there was two options put on the table for me. One was chemotherapy, and the other one was what they call watchful waiting,
right.
Which involves a lot more tests and scans, a lot more frequently. And the doctor said, "What do you want to do?" And I says, "Well, with all due respect, doctor, you're a much smarter man than I am."
Yeah.
You know, I'm confident to make most decisions about most things, but I thought that was not my decision to make. And he said, "Well, my opinion is to go with the chemotherapy." Mm-hmm. So, so that was the decision we made that day. That afternoon, I went to Sheffield to see Stereophonics. So that was a bit of a strange day, you know, going from a hospital waiting room for a lot, you know, because unfortunately, hospital waiting rooms are a dark, strange place, and you're never on time either. They're always about an hour late. So, and then I just cleared off from there and went to Stereophonics because that was a really good. I needed that night.
Yeah.
I went with one of my best mates who is here today, so I don't want to be too nice about him. You know, we went, and it gave me a good chance to switch off, and I think it was a good sort of release from, you know, a couple of months that had gone on beforehand. So
a whirlwind. And then how many cycles?
Yeah,
was it?
Just the one. Yeah, just, I mean, it was quite, having chemo's really, I've got to say it quite carefully. Actually, having the chemo itself is quite easy. I went into the day, in that day. Yes, hello, Martin. There he is. Yeah, enjoy Friday, mate. Sorry, Saturday. It's his 40th. I'm sure he's pleased that I'm telling everybody that.
And it's your birthday on Friday as well, I remember.
Yes, I'm 39. I'm still in my 30s, unlike Martin, who'll be progressing rapidly into his 40s. I think we'll take that conversation offline, Martin, anyway. I'm sure we'll make each other pay for that at the weekend. We've got planned in Edinburgh. So, yeah, the chemo itself, I had it whatever day it was, and I walked out of there. I walked about a mile and a half down the road to where my wife worked, drove home, had tea normally. The day before, we went out to a restaurant because I was told, obviously, once I've had it, I can't have any takeaways and stuff like that. I have to be really careful about picking up any bugs. So that was started my last meal.
Final stuff.
I took it really seriously. I'm sure that vibe's coming across. And I was absolutely fine. It was the next morning when I woke up and I felt like I'd had about 25 pints of Guinness, each with a double whiskey chaser, and 3 or 4 of the world's greasiest kebabs on the way home. It wasn't pleasant.
And so it was just so I didn't know. Well, you think you get to know a little bit about cancer treatment, but it's so different across the different disease areas, right? Isn't it? Like, so breast cancer, it usually is like 4 to 6 cycles. I think it's the primary cancer, but I didn't realise you can just have one big hit, really just going to blitz any sort of stray cell out of you. And
that was basically what they went for. Yeah, they went for the blitzkrieg approach, basically. That was one way we described it. Didn't work out totally well because it hit me a lot harder than they were anticipating. Unfortunately, I had strangest medical quote I've ever heard: a heart attack-like event.
Okay, wow. Okay.
Whatever that means, I still don't know to this day, but I'm still here, so I'm not going to complain too much. That landed me another week in the hospital.
You talk about it so like calmly, but actually it sounded like you had like complications after the surgery and then complications after the chemo, but you still managed to take it in your stride. Or was it difficult? Are you someone who, you know, you can laugh and joke about it, but actually you're like, shit, why is this happening to me? Or was it always like
at the time? It was a sheer hell.
Yeah.
No other way of describing it. It was sheer hell at the time. I think obviously now I'm older, wiser, greyer. You know, I've had time to process and look back on it. I've had bits of counselling as well. Yeah. You know, which is not, which, you know, it just lets you get. I think from my perspective, there was a lot of anger, and rage almost. It was that, like, you know, what have I done to deserve this? And I was cross with myself as well for getting ill. You know, I was upset. You know, I saw the stress it put on Lorien. Yeah. I saw the stress it, you know, having to tell my mum was one of the hardest conversations I've had in 39 years of knowing her. You know, I rang her up and she said, you know, and I said, look, Mum, you've just got to listen to me. She probably knew it was coming, and I told her, and she said, right, okay, you know, we'll get through it. And, you know, like you do, she says, you know, told me she loved me and that, and said, right, can you, you know, just tell your dad. I know instantly what she was doing. She was going straight to the kitchen window, which looks out over the farm they've got. And she was stood there, and I knew she'd be in tears, and she'd have a bottle of cider next to her, and that's what she was doing. And she's told me since that's exactly what she did.
And you could envisage that as you were talking to her. And
yeah, I knew that's what it was. I knew. As I say, when I prefaced the conversation with her saying about, you know, you've got to let me speak, I knew if she started trying to talk to me, I wouldn't get out what I needed to tell her. And we both end up a big blubbering mess. And, oh, hang on, did I actually tell you what I needed to, what the plan is, you know, that I'm going to be seeing, you know, the consultant. And, you know, because I live about 150 miles away from my mum and dad now. So my little sister was even further away. She was actually in Afghanistan at the time because she was in the army. So that was an interesting Facebook exchange.
You told her over Facebook?
Well, couldn't get hold of her. You know, you know, it's best of a shit situation. You know, I mean, it didn't matter too much. As much as I love my baby sister, I genuinely love her, the bones of the girl. She's not one for emotion.
Yeah, okay.
So I think it was, you know, it was probably just as easy doing it that way. I think my brother, you know, he was probably upset. He probably, you know, and what have you. He was more annoyed that his life insurance premiums went up by about 15p a month. He has told me this. So
it's funny though. One thing that really still gets me now is the guilt about hurting, upsetting the people around me. Even though I had no intention of getting cancer, it wasn't my fault. I still shouldered so much guilt about it. It's funny that you mentioned that has been a part of the important conversations in your counselling. I'm picking up. Well, for me, it has.
Yeah.
I was first diagnosed when I was 26, so we're quite similar in age, and it was 9 years ago. And I was always like, oh, I don't need to talk to anyone. I'm fine. When I spoke to them, I realised actually I wasn't fine. There was a lot of guilt, rage, anger. It's like, I want to go back to worrying about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, or worrying about a stupid letter that came from your post. I don't want to have this cloud over my head worrying about cancer. I can't go back to just taking things for granted, and I want to do that again. Why can't I take things for granted again? Why do I always have to see the bigger picture? So it's just interesting that you mentioned counselling being quite important. I think some hospitals are really good for having counselling as part of, well, they have Macmillan centres, don't they? And you have counsellors.
Yeah.
I've had lots of people aren't seeking it out. And I think sometimes it's nice for a professional to give us a bit of a nudge and say, you know what, this service is available if you do.
Yeah, that's why I like doing these sorts of things as well. You know, the little bits I've done with the Oddballs Foundation and people I know. I mean, even people I don't know. There's people on Twitter and Facebook have reached out to me and said, you know, this, that, I'm going through this and that. And I said, well, look, if you want to talk about it, mate, let me know. You can have my phone number anytime. Give me a ring. We can have a chat about it, or just DM me or what have you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a trained qualified. It just needs to be somebody. I think is that thing, you've got to get that out. You can't just bottle that up about, oh, it's my fault, because it isn't. It is anybody's fault. It's statistics at the end of it. It's going to hit 1 in 2 of us, like we spoke about earlier.
1 in 2. That is the gravity of that. 1 in 2 of us is going to have it.
Yeah.
That is just crazy, and I think we say it like it's nothing. 1 in 2 of us will get cancer. Yeah. Well, I've never really sat down and think 1 in 2 of us will get cancer, but actually that's just crazy to think that this disease is very real and will likely feel at your doorstep or someone else's, like in your lifetime. It sounds like scaremongering. It's not a statistic. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason Lauren keeps me around, I think, because, numbers-wise, she's safer now. So, one of us in the household has had it, so she's safer. Yeah, you've got to take one for the team now and again. We've all been in that situation. So, I mean, it goes to the sort of thing we were talking about earlier with the Copperfield thing, and sort of being aware of yourself physically. Testicular cancer, thankfully, is ridiculously treatable. The survival rate's 90% plus, which
that's brilliant.
You can only get to that number by the fact that, you've got to be aware of it. If you don't go to a doctor, and we spoke about stigma briefly earlier, people getting worried, some old man's going to have a hold of my, my knackers. I'd rather 50 old men had hold of my knackers and end up in a wooden box through stubbornness.
Exactly. Isn't that? And do you find, is that part of the reason why you started sharing your story? I was thinking about this earlier. I remember a campaign years ago. I don't know if you do as well. Footballers. There was a big national campaign. Footballers. What was the tagline of that? I can't remember. But that was like the last big testicular cancer campaign that I remember. Other than that, I don't think I hear a lot about it.
No, and I think that's one, you touched on Oddballs. I think they're doing some brilliant work. They, Kieran and George, who are running the scheme, are doing and all the ambassadors are doing some fantastic stuff around it. I'm a delivery driver for Asda now, and we've had stuff on the side of our vans, around breast cancer and stuff like that.
Tickle pink.
Which when we got the new livery on one of the vans, the first day I got the opportunity to take that out, I was straight in that bright pink van. I'm having that. I've got an attachment to it. So, and we say about the stigma and everything. I actually had one bloke come up to me and complain about because on the side of the van it's a bra with a melon and an apple in it.
Yeah.
And there was a bloke complaining to me that it's inappropriate.
That's good.
And I got exceptionally offended.
Good.
And I thought I had to be really careful. I'd only been in the job about probably 8 or 9 weeks, so I thought, just be careful and professional, Michael. I'm in uniform, and I says, well, look, if you've got an issue with it, you can ring head office, by all means. Knock yourself out. I'm not going to talk to you about it anymore. I've got no problem with that van. I'm proud to drive that van around. And he wanted to put this, and I just went, no, look, I'm not talking to you about it. You've got your opinions. Head office is where you need to speak to. And if he did ring head office, I hope the person on their phone just told him to go and shove it.
Brilliant.
In a very blunt form.
I'm so glad if he was going to say that to me.
But I think that's the stigma and the attitudes and everything that needs breaking down about not just testicular cancer. It goes to body awareness and being aware what's normal for yourself.
Yeah.
As soon as you know something that's don't feel right, oh, hang on, that lump wasn't there last week or last month. Oh, I'll take a wander down to GP and I'm going to assume that's the guy who was talking to me and not me. But anyway.
She should have him. She's not happy. No.
Yeah.
And I don't know why a bra with a melon and whatever it was, a peach or whatever. Not a peach. I can't remember the other bit of fruit. That's just that's clutching at straws.
The worst things in the world we can get offended about.
Oh, exactly. So with the whole, I was saying to you earlier when we spoke, I was, I've been looking forward to chatting to you since George mentioned you were vegan. Bring that up, vegan. And
thanks.
I did think for a moment, I was like, oh, am I a little bit embarrassed talking about balls? And I thought, well, that's the problem. I'm quite an open person. If I had a tinge of that thought, then that proves perhaps that there is a stigma, even if we wouldn't like to admit it. There is a bit of a stigma talking about certain body parts and cancer. I mean, and we were talking about the fact that it is just a clump of cells. Cancer is cancer, and where it decides to show up on the body part, it's very, very different. It's, you know, sorry, no, I was referring to the man objecting, so it's clarified.
Good.
Yeah.
I've been called worse things.
Sorry, I'm going to have I stupidly didn't plug in my phone for the charger. We are going to lose me, which might be, I'm sure you could hold the whole court on your own.
I don't really fancy doing this on my own. This is a two-person thing.
So what can we do you think, as, you know, society or whatever, to decrease that stigma around boobs, balls, bowels, bits?
It's just a case of keep talking about it. I think it's like any message. I think you just got to keep hammering it, you know, which is what the guys, I said, the guys at the Overson Foundation, that's what they're doing. They're going into schools and colleges, getting hold of people, well, they're not much, the kids basically, you know, sort of 15 upwards pretty much, and just encouraging them to be aware of themselves. And like if any, like that dickhead who objected, if he's got an object, do you know what? That's your problem, mate. But if anybody ever wants to listen to me bang on about my balls, hey, I'll let them listen.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right, like you said,
you know, because at the end of the day, it really could, you know, even if it's somebody overhears the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, I had a very frank conversation with one of the lads at work when I told him I'd be doing this and talking about it. And I've always got my oddball socks on, which are ridiculously bright and wonderful. And I had a big hole in my shoe that you could see as well. And I'll tell people why I'm wearing them. It's not, you know, and if it just seeps in that little bit, it might, it could save somebody's life. And, you know, it's as simple as that. You just got to keep banging on about it. And if people are getting bored of it, then you're doing something right, because it means people are hearing the message.
Do you know, I was also, I couldn't agree with you more, but I was just, my mind just went back to the fact that you said your symptoms were tiredness and back pain. And I've always assumed that testicular cancer would present, that what would bring you to the doctor is a lump. And that's just completely wrong, isn't it?
Usually it is. I mean, from what I know, usually that is the main thing people know. It's usually like a pea-sized lump, you noticed. It tends to be around the back of the testicle. It likes to hide.
Sneaky.
Well, I said, this is, yeah, exactly. This is just what happened with me. And this isn't what happens with everybody. And it's, you know, I can't speak for anybody else.
Yeah.
It's just what happened with me. And I got a little bit of luck, you know, so I'll tell people just to be aware of themselves, and hope most people will find a lump at the beginning.
And
so,
how do the kids, so have you been in, with oddballs, have you been into the schools and classes and universities? No,
because when I first got involved was just at the beginning of the whole pandemic thing, so it's all been a bit up in the air. I've made myself available to the ambassadors, to, you know, and a few of them have emailed me about, you know, just for little bits of information from my perspective and stuff like that. When I was talking to him, it was an induction day, so it was giving them the chance to actually find out, well, we know all the facts. You can have all the facts and the figures and the numbers and the stats about everything, but I think they actually benefited from hearing what it's like at the coalface, so to speak. Yeah. And that was Kieran's idea. So, you know, that's why he kind of got me into have a similar sort of conversation. Martin actually helped me write my little speech that I put on. So I did actually try and make it very light-hearted in parts, but then also at the same time explain exactly how low I got, which was rock bottom. I mean, you know, there were nights I cried myself to sleep. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But you do, because you're in a hospital bed, you're on your own. I was 27. I was, because of the nature of it, I was on urology wards, which are normally populated by elderly gentlemen. Yeah. So, as I like to consider myself a young man at the time, at 27, you know, it's not really the place you want to be. But there were some fantastic nurses who looked after me. One of them one day told me to come and be quiet because I was watching I was watching some films. I actually watched Hot Fuzz, Love Actually, and How to Train Your Dragon, which, when you high as a kite on morphine, is an interesting night. But give her a due. She came and said, you know, I was being a bit noisy. I said, look, love, I've had one of my balls cut off. I've been told I've got cancer. I've got a blood clot. If I'm going to laugh, just let me laugh. And she just said, all right, fair enough, mate. You crack on. And she brought me a cup of tea. We sat down for half an hour, had a chat about anything and everything and nothing. And that was one of the best bits of nursing I ever came across as well. You know, just sitting and talking. We didn't really talk about what happened to me, just talking about what I did for a living, what she did, and, you know, our lives as they were normally, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, journeys like this, you'll have had it yourself. You meet some fantastic people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not all shit.
Yeah.
It really isn't. You do get to meet some brilliant people. You really do.
Yeah.
You know, shared experiences, encouraging people to be aware of themselves and things like that as well, and getting the message out. It's great.
I talk more about cancer than I ever did, and I think part of that's because of the friends that I've made in the cancer community. I don't know why I do that. The cancer community. Why am I doing that? Why am I doing that?
We're a community.
We are a community, and there's people that in the peripheral are very much part of it as well. But
I think a lot of it comes though, we don't want people to have to go through what we went through as well.
Yeah, I felt quite alone as well. You mentioning that back in, so when I was 26, 7, I remember Notting Hill Carnival weekend. I was in the hospital with sepsis, and I remember just looking out at the London skyline, feeling really bloody alone, and then my mates were out partying, and that was a bit of a low moment for me too. And I think,
yeah, it's a little thing. You know, you question that. Are you going to get to do all that again? Are you going to get? I referee rugby league. I thought, will I be able to get back out on the pitch and referee? You know, will I be able to get back out and play cricket? And I've done all that, and I've done it better than I did previously. Do you know what I mean? So maybe that right testicle was holding me back one way or another. I don't know. Maybe that was the problem.
Yeah. So do you think it has changed now that you get old? Like I know that you've had that period of, you know, rock bottom, which is completely understandable. Because it's a trauma. I know it is a traumatic event. You can't move forward
it is.
without bringing it with you. You can't just leave it behind. It comes with you. So you've got to learn how to live with it. But have you come? Are you okay now? Has your perspective changed? Are you living your best life? What's going on?
Yeah, it's an awful phase, but it is what it is at the end of the day. I mean, I'm fortunate because there's no long-term effects or anything like that. I can look at it in a very similar way to how it was when I broke my ankle.
Right.
Same sort of things happened. I had a problem. I went to the hospital. I got it fixed. I came out the other end, which is, I know it sounds almost very simplistic.
Yeah.
But with age and time and everything, you can kind of put it into that fashion, because I've got no problem now with my ankle that I broke, except when it's really cold, I'll feel a little bit in it.
Yeah.
I have no layover really from the testicular cancer, apart from a few issues with a bit of pain in the one remaining from a bit of scar tissue and a bit of nerve damage. But ultimately, day to day, it has no impact on my life. No. It doesn't change who I am. It hasn't changed what I do. It doesn't define me in any way, shape or form. For a long time, I tried to shut it out though. I thought, I don't want, my way of saying, oh, this isn't going to define me was to ignore that it had happened.
Right.
But ultimately that didn't work. It was there on my shoulder, waiting for its chance to pounce. And there was one point where it's just gone, I can see a weakness in you. You're having a bad time. I'm having you. Yeah. And that's what it does if you don't get it out and talk about it and try and deal with it.
I'm with you on that, 1,000,000%. And I think I've lost my train of thought thinking about that. Where have I gone? I was so in that. It's glad it sits on your shoulder, and then you've got to learn to live with it, because you can't, like I say, you can't leave your baggage. Well, I call it baggage. That's not a nice word, but I see it as, you know, these great suitcases I've acquired, and I can't leave them because they've got like bits of me in them. I've got to bring them forward with me. Yeah. I've got to kind of learn to, you know, carry the load, as it were. And I've found,
yeah, but it gets lighter.
Yeah, it does. It does get lighter. And I've managed. I love telling everyone. I've had cancer 3 times because I like playing toppers against myself for some reason. I was deciding, like, right, you've had cancer once, I'll have it twice. You've had it twice, I'll have it 3 times. And
Go big or go home.
it's been really difficult, but it has got lighter. I never would have believed it a year ago, despite, you know, everything. It does get lighter, and I think it's really important to talk about the fact that speaking is really, really, really good for you. If you can get hold of, if you're struggling with cancer,
things like this are quite cathartic, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're really good. They're like, they say stuff, you're like, oh,
yeah,
God, yeah, you get it, you know. They're very clever.
Yeah, it's a good release as well, and like I say, you know, it's the old cheesy thing, you know. Sometimes the best things come out of the worst situations and all that malarkey and what have you. Know, I don't necessarily subscribe to that entirely, but I can always find positives in it. It was, you know, it was a pretty strong test for my marriage in the first year,
right?
You know, which is bound to be, you know. And I'm not going to say that the following couple of years were easy for us; they really weren't. You know, it was a massive thing. It was mad, and it wasn't necessarily because, you know, there wasn't the love or anything. It's just hard.
Of course.
It's just, a marriage is hard at the best of times, but something like that in it. An analogy I used is, you know, the happiness of our wedding day. Somebody chucked a grenade into the middle of it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, but you know, we're still together now. We've been together 20 years at the end of this month. Wow. 20 years, yeah. You know, we've been together since we were 19.
Oh, I love
yeah, she's gone out. She's out for tea tonight, which is probably a good job, because if I was being nice about her like this, she'd probably think I was dying or something, and or I'd be bawling my eyes out. So, and yeah, so Martin, if you cannot tell her I've been too nice about her.
Do you think having her, you've already said that her support really got you through everything?
Yeah.
What would you say to someone, because it is such a young man's disease, what would you say to someone who perhaps didn't have that partner in their lives? Where could they go and get? Who should they rely on? Who can they rely on? Can they go to Oddballs? Are there any other charities that kind of offer?
Yeah, Oddballs would easily put you in touch with the right people.
Yeah.
You know, I've said to them myself, you know, if you've got somebody who does get it and wants to talk to somebody, send them my way straight away. You know,
brilliant.
All the charities, you know, the big charities like Macmillan and stuff like that, I've got plenty of advisors and counsellors who can point you in the right direction. But it's the same with, like, you know, with any mental health condition as well. You know, there's always somebody out there to talk to.
Yeah.
You know, or I think ultimately as well, I think we're now in a better place as a society where men can talk to men about these things as well.
Yeah. You think
you know, if we went back 30 years ago, blokes wouldn't talk about this sort of stuff.
No.
You know, and for all the joking that me and Martin make about one another, for example, you know, being a git and what have you, you know, when we've needed each other, ultimately we've been there for one another. One time when I was in hospital, he messaged me and he said, "Oh, is there anything you need, anything you're bringing in?" I just said, "Oh, whiskey would be nice." So he turned up with a little hip flask, and you know the little tablets, things you get your tablets in that are about that big. So he was sort of looking around like this, you know, there's no nurses about. And it was the tiniest little jab, but it's little things like that. Do you know what I mean? That, you know, they do have a big impact. You know, and I would like to think everyone would have at least one mate they could go and say to, "Look, mate, I'm struggling. Yeah, this is what I'm going through.
Mate,
I need to talk to somebody. Can we go for a coffee? Can we go for a pint?" You know, you can find the help if you want. You shut up.
So that would be my final. We've covered quite a lot, and I'm really grateful to have listened to the story. I think we've touched on some really important issues. I didn't expect us to talk quite so much about the mental health side, but it is so. I've not told anyone I've had a counselling session before. You got that out of me from just being so open.
Well, because I don't want people thinking I'm flippant about what happened to me. It's not that. My way of dealing with part of it is taking the piss. I don't take life seriously. My dad's 75 and he hasn't grown up, for God's sake. So I'm not going to start at 39. Well, 38 till Friday. So that was my way of coping with it. You have a laugh about these things. Yeah, it's shit, but you can still have a laugh about it. Find the funny.
Find the funny. That's the advice. Find the funny. And if you want any further information, you can head to Oddballs and we can get in contact. Well, I'm sure your DMs are open to anyone who might want to drop a line. So we have testicular cancer, and I know that sometimes younger people do search for accounts via the hashtag. So you're welcome to drop my call a message. Thank you so
I'll
much.
help anybody.
This has been lovely.
Oh, it's been great.
How much of your wine?
It's been a good laugh, this. Just the one glass.
Just the one. Oh, you see, I don't, there you are. Hey! Thank you so much. We'll definitely keep in touch. I'll follow you.
I know, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and all the very best. Speak to you.
And to you. Take care of yourself.
Take care. Thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Bye, bye, bye.